So, recently I went to go watch a horror movie at my local shack with a tattered sail as a projection screen, aka the Gateshead Cinema, and once the film had ended I gathered my empty cans and tried to leave, only to be prevented by the people sitting next to me. I asked them to move, yet they refused, pointing at the screen with gnarled hands and muttering what could only be described as Pig Geordie, post-credit sequence. And then it hit me. So many films chuck post-credit scenes into the mix that we're expecting them to be there, even when they shouldn't be. And it got me thinking, how many of them were utterly pointless? The answer is, a lot. With this in mind, I'm Jules, WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 movie post-credit scenes that went absolutely nowhere. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to stay notified. Ding, ding, done. Number 10, Deadpool Lives, X-Men Origins Wolverine. Having been killed off in the climactic battle, sorry, let me just change that there quickly, in the bullshit why the fuck am I watching this with Wolverine and Sabretooth, it turns out that Wade Wilson's healing factor is actually stronger than the brothers believed. So while his head was removed, the post-credits see him open his eyes and a hand picks up his decapitated head. This teased the return of this nightmare version of Deadpool, but luckily we were saved by this film being an absolute skipfire, so the tease ended up being cut mercifully short. Number 9, I'll Be Back, Masters of the Universe. After He-Man has broken out of Skeletor's servitude and beaten him in battle, the villain is sent beneath the throne room within Castle Grayskull, presumably to his death. But then in the post-credits stinger, Skeletor's head is seen rising from the waters of the pit, and he does his best Terminator impression, threatening, "I'll be back!" Would it fuck though, as the film failed to make its budget back or sell enough toys to warrant a sequel, so any potential franchise was dead on arrival. And it's a shame too, because Frank Langella's Skeletor was easily the best thing about the whole film, and seeing more of him wouldn't have been entirely unwelcome. Number 8, Tony Stark and the Avengers, The Incredible Hulk. At the end of The Incredible Hulk, General Thunderbolt Ross sits back in a bar necking booze when all of a sudden your dad's secret crush Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark enters to goad him about the use of super soldier serums and then mentions that he's putting a team together.
What if I told you we were putting a team together?
Now on paper, this is just one of many links to the Avengers. However, in practice, it makes no sense. Stark coming to Ross is a pointless move, as Ross doesn't have a clue where the Hulk was. Instead, this looks to set up the Hulk as the villain of the Avengers, and Stark is offering Ross an option to deal with the threat. This obviously went nowhere, as the universe was changed after the film flopped more than the Hulk's big green penis when freed from those magical purple trousers, and while being a bit of a menace in the Avengers, was definitely on the side of the good guys. Number 7, The Frost Monster, Thor: The Dark World. With all the chaos surrounding the finale of Thor: The Dark World, we suppose it was easy for a few things to get lost in the confusion. The convergence was in full swing and all the worlds were colliding, dark elves were appearing all over London, and gravity was just going crazy. Even after the dust had settled and the good guys had won, there was still a giant crashed spaceship in the middle of London, so it was nice to see the week after the movie opened that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. showed a team clearing up the mess. Yet it's utterly baffling that no one ever mentioned chasing down a huge frost monster that was last seen running around London in the end credits. It begs the question, did anyone actually catch that thing, or is it still running loose in a major city? Now, it's obviously meant to be a gag seeing as how it's framed, but seeing as they went to the lengths to show the craft cleanup, a little nod to this rogue would have been much appreciated. Although if it was bouncing around Tottenham, I doubt that anyone would have noticed. Number 6, more aliens, Battleship. The fact that Battleship, a movie based on a board game starring Rihanna, had the cheek to include a post-credit sequence was bad enough, but the blatant sequel tease of an alien reaching out of a rock might be one of the most overconfident and hilarious displays in recent memory. I would have believed the terror in the faces of the kids more if the alien was clutching the script for the sequel. That would have been truly awful. Thankfully, the franchise was sunk soon out of the gates. What a shame, am I right? Number 5, Bullseye is fine, Daredevil. I would hate to be Bullseye in the Daredevil film. Your one superpower, besides being able to choose scenery, is being able to aim really, really well. And then you spend all of your time missing your target. That's gotta sting. Well, that and being thrown through a window and breaking all of your bones when you land on a car. The post-credit sequence shows the aftermath, with him in a full-body cast and only a couple of fingers free. There's a fly in the room annoying him, so he moves to pick up a toothpick from the table next to him. The sound of the fly stops as he hits it, and we get a shot of his eyes looking supremely happy with himself. This teased that he would indeed be back, but with sails more red than Daredevil's suit, this post-credit sequence, much like Bullseye, missed the f***ing mark. Number 4, Zool, Ghostbusters 2016. Having dealt with the worst villain in the history of cinema, partly by shooting him in the actual ghost dick, the Ghostbusters return to their new expensive HQ to get back to some bustin'. And by that I mean they make terrible jokes and then Patty turns to the others and says, "What's Zool?" The cast shrug with all the indifference you'd expect from a 2-hour improv session of a film and leave the audience hanging. Well, they leave those who haven't already hung themselves, I mean. And hang they will be for a long time, because while even though the cast signed on for 2 sequels, the reception for this film has been so lifeless that not even a necrophiliac could get a laugh from it. So no Zool for them. Number 3, The Pimp. Idiocracy. After defying the odds and fixing America's food shortages, dust bowls, and economy within a week, Luke Wilson's Joe, despite the hiccup of being temporarily sentenced to death for causing mass unemployment, is elected vice president and eventually president. He marries former prostitute Rita, and they have the world's smartest 3 children, and the film ends. In a post-credits sequence, though, Rita's former pimp is shown getting out of the same sort of cryopod that brought Rita and Joe to the future. He puts on a hat and swaggers away saying, "I'm gonna find this hoe." It might have mostly been a gag, but this seems to suggest the possibility of a sequel in which the pimp comes after Rita. While there was talk of a spin-off back in 2012, things have been quiet since, and one can only imagine him wandering forever in search of his missing hoe. We've all been there, right lads? Number 2, more infection. Slither. The end of James Gunn's excellent and underappreciated horror Slither sees the few survivors, led by Nathan Fillion's Sheriff Bill, see off the monster by filling him with propane and exploding him, at which point all of the infected victims die. We've all been there, right lads? Everyone lives happily ever after, despite some injuries, and the credits roll. But then this cat rocks up, has a lick at the dead monster because cats love a free and disgusting meal, and we hear the sound of it being assimilated. Cue an image of John Carpenter's The Thing, and we all go home wishing for a sequel. Well, we would if anyone actually went to see the film, as it performed so badly that Universal distanced themselves from the project and any future installments. Sad times. And number 1, Mr. Sinister X-Men Apocalypse. After Wolverine's cameo in Apocalypse, the post-credits scene for this dividing sequel saw a cleanup team removing his victims and their freshly diced innards from the Weapon X facility. And in amongst the chaos, we see a suited man taking vials of Logan's blood marked Weapon X and putting them into a briefcase full of other vials. The briefcase is marked Essex Corp, suggesting that the man's paymaster is Mr. Sinister. Ooh, this could have been so good. With all those powers at his disposal, Mr. Sinister could craft an excellent tale of mutant-on-mutant violence not seen since your mum's early porno days. There's my one per list. But alas, it was not to be, as it's been confirmed recently that the studio is going to go with the Dark Phoenix storyline for their next installment, and instead this might just be relegated to an alternative timeline, which will never see the light of day. Boo-hoo.
Gosh, can you believe that that person said that about that particular video on that entry? I sure can't. But you should like, share and subscribe below anyway. And also, the people who made this video, they're right here. Go follow them and give them some love. Also, there's more content, probably above my head. Check it out. Or don't. 50-50.